GG, I am DJ Jones of All, Death Roundtable Podcast, your source of knowledge. Tonight's a special segment. I want to talk about economics, you know what I'm saying? Just kind of elaborate more about the economic system. And just talk about the root cause of economics as far as the inequality. Something I always want to talk about because honestly, this is like a little misconception as far as like how, when you think about slavery, right? Let me start with slavery, right? Slavery, we tend to really, associate slavery to Africa, right? When we think about historically, right? But, slavery came way before the first group of Africans were brought to the New World. If you want to call it the New World. However, though, you can't call it a New World if there were, people already, living in that particular area, the Aboriginals. But, again, though, most of us definitely associate slavery, to Africa. But, it's been, it existed way before that. But one thing I definitely have to say though, and we definitely had to really, be more informed about it and really, go back into our into our history. And I said this, in a couple of times in the podcast, classism is the father of racism. And what I mean by that is because slavery really started based on economic purposes. It was about economic advantage. It had nothing to do about, as far as like race, because race later on, it became like a pseudoscience in order for the Europeans to actually, find a way to justify that. But slavery definitely, was a way to really, for the Europeans to create cheap labor and really, generate their wealth. But when you think about, historically, before this whole idea of race came about, it was really about, economic advantage. In fact, the first, laborers that were brought to the New World, like I said earlier, you want to call it New World, was European indigenous servants. The only problem was that, it was a contract between that agreement as far as they'll be brought, into the American colonies and, they'll, commit to a certain amount of years of labor. And once they actually fulfill those years, then they'll be free with land, So it wasn't beneficial for those Europeans that actually owned those servants, throughout that contract. So it was more beneficial for them to actually have, permanent servants, which, obviously is slavery. And that's how the whole thing came about. Because, at one time, white servants, European, indigenous servants working side by side with African slaves, and in fact, they had intermarriages. So, again, the whole idea didn't really, came about into the mid 1600s. When again though, they had to really create a way to kind of, justify of why they're enslaving Africans. And that's the whole pseudoscience came about, And again though, the way we were taught, we definitely, we think about slavery and, honestly, for me, the way I've learned it, as an adult, meaning, I learned it where it's about economic purposes. So we think about social inequality right now in today's world. We think about systemic racism. It really stems down into economics. It's really not about, looking up on someone's color. However, though, being because of the history of the impact it had of the ideology of race, definitely has a reflection of today's present. And this is why we go through so much of just being a person of color, because historically speaking, the impact it had as far as creating this idea called race. But just the root cause of slavery is really economics. And I want to make sure we point that out because, the whole point when you created this whole system of, creating race, it was really about divide and conquer. Because you can't have poor whites and poor, blacks, quote unquote, right, working together side by side, where they see what's happening right now, and you have them unite, together. So So the whole point was to divide those two groups. You had to divide the poor whites and the poor blacks. And that's how the whole idea came about, as far as like trying to create a way to justify slavery. And again, I mean, I can't really, emphasize it too much, because I mean, it definitely stems down into creating a pseudoscience. But the main idea, the overall, idea about this whole thing, it all boils down into economics, and again, slave trading existed way before, the Europeans bringing the first group of Africans into, the American colonies, But I mean, again though, this definitely has a reflection in today's presence. This is why it's very important for us to really always go back into our history and really learn our true history and understand why things are the way they are today. And I think with us as humans though, our brain is really wired into, being reductionist, right? Like we think in categories. You know what I'm saying? Like we think in categories. We don't really see the systemic relationship. You know what I'm saying? We don't look at it from a point of science. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, it's kind of hard to explain. I'm trying to figure out the right wording, but you know what I'm saying? Like for us though, we have to have an understanding of the systems of science in order to understand the systemic racism and pretty much any other kind of phenomenon. You know what I'm saying? Which is everything. If you really think about it. And, we tend to look at the symptom and not the overall root cause. You know what I'm saying? If I'm saying it right. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, it's a lot to do with the way we really, our perception of how we look at certain things. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Just life in general. And I mean, again, though, it just really boils down to us really looking at it from a different perspective, And I mean, again, though, honestly, America is definitely was built on slavery. That's how they was able to really build their wealth. And it definitely benefited the people that were the conquerors, the descendants that are able to this day, actually, capitalize off that. And this is why we see such an income gap, between, white families, black families, Latino families, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, it all stems down to, of this whole economic system that was designed and to create a way to justify, people that look differently from people that, were the conquerors. And that's how this whole thing is, it started about, where, it all boils down to economics, And it's very important that we understand that because, before this whole idea of slavery, it was really about religion. It was really about religion and, your socioeconomic status. It had nothing to do with your physical, appearance, But again, though, after a while, they have to really figure out how we're going to justify this system that we, we benefited off. And at the same time, with the European indigenous servants, they only were, contracted to work for a certain amount of time. After that time was done, that was it. So again, though, they had to figure out a way to really make something that could be permanent. And the way they did it is by justifying of, making someone that looks different from them, from a darker complexion, and say that, they're inferior. And that's how the whole idea of race came about. And that's how they was able to justify slavery. So it's very important that we understand that, And I mean, listen, man, just going back, for me, first of all, when you think about this country itself, right? Many people definitely take a lot of pride. It's the greatest country in the world. It's a land of opportunity, etc. But again, though, we gotta understand this. You're really saying at the same time, this country, it is what it is because of what they did historically. You know what I'm saying? Because again, though, when you think about slavery, United States have a unique relationship when it comes to slavery, though. You know what I'm saying? It's very different how you look at slavery, how it was used in in the days, in Africa. The days of the Roman Empire. Because again, though, it was just a whole different ideology as far as how to justify, that particular time, or to this day though, honestly, because again though, we still going through this whole systemic racism of basically because of what happened throughout history. And this is why I always say, it's imperative to really understand your history, to really understand today's present. So again though, and when you think about even after the post-slavery, right? The Black Code, which was a way to really bring back Africans, former slaves, back into the plantation, where they would create these bogus laws in order to them, to convict them, to go, go to jail. In order for them to actually, get be released out of jail, they had to actually buy their bond. And the way it worked, it was like a contract. I will basically buy your bond, bail you out, but you have to work for me. So it was a whole different form of slavery. And we see it today right now. We think about private prisons, right? Because private prisons is a whole different form of slavery. When you got these prisoners working for about 8 cents an hour for these multi-billion-dollar corporations. So really, if you really think about it, again, it's all about perception, how you really dissect things and look at it from a different lens. It really hasn't really changed. It's a whole different form where we may not see it the way we were, the way we saw it historically, but it's still the same idea. This is why we have to really, keep an open mind. And again though, it's very unfortunate that we, again, it's 2020 and we're still going through this whole systemic racism. We're still looking at, at people based on their physical appearance. And this shows you our way of thinking still. Like for us as being a human, it's the most advanced species on this earth. But yet we still tie down into this idea that was invented, over 400 years ago. And it's just kind of crazy because I always said this, man. Listen, I never doubt anything as far as like any outside life, outside this planet. But if there is any life outside this planet, I could almost guarantee that there'll be more advanced than we are. You think that we, honestly, here on Earth, like I just said right now, we're the most advanced species, but I can only imagine if there's any life outside of this planet, how more advanced they are. And I always said this, if you get invaded by any aliens, any life that's outside this planet, I swear to everything, they're gonna look at us like some dumbasses. Excuse my language, but I couldn't say it any other way to make it more blunt. Because again though, we as humans, it's kind of like still, it just baffles me that we still have this idea stuck in our head, that we still have this judgment, how we just look upon each other, based on our physical appearance that has nothing to do with our character, and it's very unfortunate, but it goes with also our training, our education, because one thing, I said this in a podcast, it's a difference between education and intelligence, in the first years of our human experience is very crucial because, honestly, the human brain, like the first 7 years is where you can really be programmed into thinking in one certain way. And this is why it's very important when you see a child at an early age that, like you teach them one certain way and they'll keep that way of thinking and it'll be, programmed into their brain. The moment you tell your son or daughter, you at the park, I don't want you to play with that kid with the chinky eyes, or I don't want you to play with that kid that's dark skinned than you, he's darker than you, I don't want you to play with him. That becomes programmed into their brain because if you see, children, they don't see race, they don't see that, they don't even know what that is. It's not until you install that into their brain, it becomes more embedded, and it becomes part of their upbringing. They had that mentality. So again though, this is why it's very important when you really think about how you really teach the young generation, because again, we're in 2020, We're in 2020 and we're talking about an idea that was invented over 400 years ago, and we're still stuck on this idea. This is why systemic racism still exists, and it's a real thing. You know what I'm saying? So, we gotta really understand this. But going back to what I was saying though about the slave code, right? So, after, the post-slavery, took place, whatever, slaves were, free. However, though, I don't really call it free because even after slavery, it was called a term called convict leasing. So, the South is particularly, decided that we're going to create these ridiculous laws that, we're going to arrest former slaves and put them back to work through the prison labor. So I just stated right now, even to this day, when you think about private prison, the majority of prisoners are black and Latinos. The majority of them. And don't quote me on this, I think they make about 66% of the prison population. But yet, when you think about the stats, blacks and Latinos that make up the population here in the United States, they make about 31%, 32% to be safe, but yet they make 66% of the prison population. So it's very important to really understand that. So, they were basically leased out to these capitalist institutions, to abuse their labor for free. So slavery was abolished. Again, this is why it's very important to really go back in history and understand, exactly why things are the way they are today. It's just like, it's no coincidence, and it's just something that's been proven, right? You being a person of color, you have 1 out of 4 chances that you're going to end up in prison. That means you just being born brown or black, you have a 25% of going to jail. That has nothing to do with your character, nothing to do with your upbringing. Just because you were born a certain color, you already have a 25% chance of landing yourself in jail. So again, though, these are things that we have to really think about and really understand. The reason why it to this day is still happening. Again, though, we definitely got to go back into our history. And when you have these white supremacists, again, and, the whole KKK was the first terrorist group ever established, besides, the Europeans, because honestly, the Europeans were the first terrorist group, because honestly, they came into a new land, to them, although there was people, already there living, and basically took all the land, took all the resources, and then afterwards, they put a sign up, thou shalt not steal. And it was so contradictory because they were so heavy of being Christians, but they went so against about, the true religion, the true practice of being a Christian. And this is why I don't take any of that religious thing, that religious thing very seriously, because they don't practice what they preach, But, so going back to what I was saying, though, so you got these, white supremacists, the KKK, and, they still perpetuate this whole idea because, again, of how they were uprooted. Because, end of the day, no one's born racist. No one's born racist. That's impossible. You can never, it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. But it all boils down into someone's upbringing, And it's very important that we understand that, because, again, though, this was done, in a very strategic way. Even the term, called black, which I'll definitely have an episode about that separately. But I'm just gonna dive in a little bit about it. The term black was labeled on purpose of calling Africans black. Because at the end of the day, this is black. This what I have right now, this is black. And when you think about the definition of black, it has a very negative connotation. Like black plague, black death, black magic. Like those things, they did it purposely to even justify more of why you are inferior. But we're gonna definitely have an episode about, of European using that label into basically, using that term to label Africans as being called black, because, before the Europeans came to Africa and, brought the first group, no African called each other black. You know what I'm saying? So this whole labeling thing of falling to the black by your oppressor, definitely to this day has an impact on us, because it's a way to even make you more inferior. But again, we're gonna definitely have a different episode about that. So going back to what I was saying though, you know what I'm saying, when you think about racism and institutional racism, there is a difference, right? Because racism is when a white kid, walks into a church that's predominantly, people of color, and starts to shoot people with the intention to kill them. That's called racism. Like, their intent is to kill these people based on their color. Institutional racism, however, we may not see it as directly as that white kid that walked into that church and started killing people of color, because it's different ways. When a police officer pulls out a gun at an unarmed person of color while they're walking away and shoots at them, that's institutional racism. You know what I'm saying? When you think about redlining, black families being denied of, applying for loans where they can buy property, and how certain neighborhoods were designed not to allow a certain group of people to actually move there, that's called, institutional racism. So these are two things that we got to understand. However, though, it is done indirectly, but it's still racist, based on historically of how, this idea of race still to this day has an impact. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of crazy though, man. It's kind of crazy. You really think about everything, in this country, that, honestly, I just really say this. I was born and raised in this country. I'm the first generation from my family that was born here. But thankfully, that I was always, always an open-minded person. You know what I'm saying? I never took anything for granted. I always saw things through different lenses. I don't accept things the way it is and just accept it because someone just told me, you know what I'm saying? That's the way it is. I've always been a critical thinker. And the more I really started to go back and really start, because one thing about me, I really, I thoroughly research. You know what I'm saying? And I really read a lot of books from a lot of notable authors, people that really, you know what I'm saying, that definitely done their research. And and it's also based on observation, the scientific method of looking things from yourself, you know what I'm saying, to really assess things. So it's just you got to be oblivious to really, deny of the, of the systemic racism in this country, and just accept things because, you know what I'm saying, well, this other country doesn't really, don't have the benefits that we have. So now we got to just accept the way things are because, another nation may not have the resources because, historically speaking, this country became wealthy because of our ancestors, working for free. And that's how this country became so dominant to go to other countries and take over. You know what I'm saying? This is why this country is able to do what it could do, in today's world. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of just kind of again though, it baffles me when I hear those kind of remarks from other people. But yeah, man, it's kind of crazy, man. And it's kind of it's just all psychology too, though. How do you make a certain group of people as an enemy? And people of color has always been targeted into making themselves the enemy, making themselves look at this as the enemy, right? Because Richard Nixon, he started the whole idea about the war on drugs, right? And his idea was flat out racist because he knew already what particular group is going to target. You know what I'm saying? And one thing about drugs, you can't say no to drugs when you can make a lot of money off of it, especially when you're targeted at a very deprived, neighborhood that's, deprived. You know what I'm saying? That they don't have, they're very limited in resources. They don't have a lot of opportunities. And you put this substance that, first of all, people use it for them to relieve themselves from all the stress they go through on a daily basis of trying to make a living, and also knowing that people can make a lot of money off of it. So that was actually put in place purposely. This whole war on drugs was basically a way to really control the people of color and make them fall into this trap. Because again, though, when you think about just drugs in general, the biggest, kingpins of drug dealing are who? Are who? You know what I'm saying? I'm not even gonna answer. I'm gonna let you answer that. You know what I'm saying? So again, though, listen, man. It's very important for us to really go back and really understand this. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not about coincidence. And this is why when you look at, young colored people, especially males, that's, who are really highly targeted, in the TV screens, they project as being the ultimate threat, to society. And people see that, and that develops and reinforces that image of that evil person of color, and it becomes culturally generated, and passed on. You know what I'm saying? This is why Trayvon Martin, a person of color wearing a hoodie. We depicted, we already have this whole thing that someone who's wearing a hoodie, especially if a person of color, they are threats. Because again, though, it's based on how it's really projected to us. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, again, though, man, when you really understand this, man, the more and more you're going to start opening up your mind. You're going to start opening up your mind, and you're going to be like, wow. Once you're really able to see things from a different perspective, you know what I'm saying? Because it all really comes down to you really opening up your mind. Knock everything away, all that, all that thing that, all that, information, all that that's been put upon you as a child. You got to set that aside and just always keep an open mind and really assess things. You know what I'm saying? Go through observation. Because observation is right in front of your face. You know what I'm saying? You can't deny something that you can see right in front of you. So it's very important that we understand that. You know what I'm saying? So going back into this whole thing about economics, right? Again, though, classism is the father of racism. And it's really, this whole social inequality is really based on economics, the history. You know what I'm saying? And, again, though, it's just no coincidence when you have a low socioeconomic, status that, which, arguably is the worst thing that any child could go through. It could definitely have a certain effect on them as they grow up. You know what I'm saying? That's been clinically proven. You know what I'm saying? Listen, you could take the most ethical person on earth, put them in a poorest neighborhood with no resources, with nothing to live off of. More than likely, that person is going to begin to steal, to lie, cheat, everything. You know what I'm saying? Because again, though, your environment has a lot to do with your behavior. You know what I'm saying? So there's no coincidence how certain people, certain environments behave a certain way. This is why the poorest cities here in the United States has the highest crime rates. You know what I'm saying? So this is like, again, it's all about observation. Things that you can actually see yourself. You can research it yourself. You know what I mean? So again, it's very important we understand that. You know what I mean? And honestly, when we think about poverty, right? You know what I'm saying? Poverty, it is, the major cause of deaths globally. Poverty kills people more than anything else. It is a public health issue. You know what I'm saying? So to really begin with trying to change things right now in this world, we got to start with social economics, as far as like people being deprived from their basic necessities. You know what I'm saying? Because honestly, it's been studies after studies. When people have their needs met, and when I'm just talking about just their needs met, and also when they're not looked upon as being inferior, it definitely has an impact as far as like their behavior. So we got to remove poverty out the equation. You know what I'm saying? Because again, though, we can't have this system, this hierarchy of having a certain status. We have the super rich. I don't know what to call it. You know what? Actually, you know what? That's actually the wrong term to even use. I'll think about the right term, because even super rich, that's not even the correct way to say it. But when you have a certain group that have so much wealth, so much power, just a small percentage, opposed to the majority of people who are just economically deprived, of course there's going to be conflicts. Of course there's going to be a lot of crimes. That is something that's obvious. It takes a genius to figure that out. So again though, man, I mean, listen, again, this is why, for me, doing this podcast, what I'm saying? I mean, the main objective really for me to start this podcast was to really share a lot of information and open up people's minds and make people to really do their own research. And I want you to question me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's my goal too. I want you to question me. I want you to challenge everything I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Because that just shows me that you're doing your research. That just shows me that you open up your mind. And again though, I mean, having this platform definitely, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a job to me. Like, I love to do what I do right now. Aside from being an educator, I love this. So, I mean, listen, man, Do Not the Roundtable Podcast, your source of knowledge. I am DJ John Tavar. I want to sign off. But, I mean, listen, man, just always keep an open mind to new information. And, I mean, listen, never, ever reject something without questioning it. Same thing as accepting it without questioning it. I'm signing off. John Tavar. Peace out. DJ, I am DJ John Tavar with my co-host, Chris Ryder. We are Dinner at the Roundtable Podcast, your source to knowledge. Make sure you click like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel on the lower right-hand side. We appreciate the support. Peace out.